Okay, today we're doing something different. We're going to do more of a podcasty type thing. We're in COVID lockdowny type situation over here right now. So rather than playing on a table, we're sitting here in my lounge chairs, wearing masks, socially separated, so being all considerate and responsible. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do was to put together a video initially of why we like Kings of War, and and why we hold in such high esteem as a war game for war gamers. So we're going to work through a couple things. I've split this up into looking at it from the rules perspective, what makes it good in the rules, time, how much time you spend and what you spend your time on, hobby. If you're a hobbyist or you want to get better at the hobby, the opportunities it gives you, the community, like the kind of people that play Kings of War, and then the downsides. They're very few and they're not major, but they're worth mentioning just to be fair and balanced.
Transparent.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with the rules, and I'll start with, we've got basically 5 pages of show notes here, so this may end up being fairly long. I don't know how much editing I'm going to do, if any. And what I should really do first is make sure that the recording is still saying that it's recording. It definitely is. Awesome.
Nice.
Okay, so the first thing for Kings of War: simple rules, complex gameplay, and think of chess rather than checkers. Checkers is a straightforward game. You can learn it pretty quickly. Chess you can learn pretty quickly. All you really need to know is the moves that each of the pieces make. But the gameplay is very complex, and much like chess, that's how Kings of War runs.
Yeah. So just on that part, I think it is important to say simple rules, complex gameplay. But the way I like to envision it is the game itself. The rules are very straightforward. I wouldn't say as simple as such. Simple is a good way to put it. I'm not going to criticize that. I just think there's less ambiguity. There's less of a like many game systems that we've played, where there's interpretation, how you see it, how I see it, and then sometimes you need a rule judge to say,
poorly written rules.
Poorly written rules that end up having to be FAQ'd, and then they get changed again.
Yep.
Kings of War likes to sit with a system that has been polished and built over time. We're now on the 3rd edition. And they've been very clever at listening to the community and keeping it straightforward.
Except for one of the new things in Halpy's Rift, which would be the cover, the ignores cover thing. They need to rename that.
But that's going to happen, right?
But look, that's one thing
Yeah.
in a full rule set. It's really well written. You find a lot of the rules, they're written, the way I'd use it, computer IT type wise, is they're efficient.
Yes.
And they're optimized. So the rules are actually fairly good. You'll find yourself creating situations that you're trying to think about and justify in your head, and we've done this plenty of times on stream, and then we've gone and we've looked at a single sentence in the rules.
Yep.
And it's like we've been overthinking the whole thing.
That's right.
Okay, so the next thing is that. So the game rules are easy to learn. A couple of turns and a new player will understand the broad strokes of the game and can start playing. Two turns. You can play 2 turns and you'll know enough to be able to figure out what you want to do.
Yep.
When you're playing on the table, you'll know enough to how to execute what you want to do.
Yep.
There'll be some special things that you'd still need the other person to help you out with, like how do I use this spell?
Yep.
But by the end of the game, you should know that army. It doesn't take a lot.
Yep.
You could literally look at like a single page of rules.
Yep.
Sometimes maybe 2, and instead of you look at some things where you have to print out like 17 pages to get all the special rules and all that. You'll have probably 2 pages, maybe 3 at the max, and it's usually just it's mostly just stats.
A good example of that is we just had an individual who joined our community, who took all this time to build this beautiful missile army. His only first real game with this army, and within a few turns, he recognized the mistakes that he had made, the adjustments he would need for the next game. Kind of like that first time, as you said earlier, think chess instead of checkers.
Mhm.
He learned there were some really key moments in that game that he did not make that decision that was best for his army.
Yep.
And he went back to the drawing board. He's already got some new units painted up, and he's ready to play for our next game. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to lock it down for a little bit. But really exciting to see that it wasn't about list building. It was about implementation of tactics and using the right units.
Yeah, we'll get more into that later. Okay, okay, the game rules creates a game that makes your generalship on the table while pursuing the mission objectives a decisive factor, rather than interplay of rules combinations. And the missions are varied and excellent. So what you do is when you're playing Kings of War, it's not so much, okay, how much time did I spend not on the table, digging up for stuff that goes well. You can put your army on the table, or if it's somebody else's army, you know, you have a general idea of what your units do, and most of the time you can, like, say you're playing most of the fantasy trope armies, you'll be able to say, okay, I've got elvish archers, they shoot, you know. I've got orcs, they hit with axes, you know, like so you know really what you're going to want to do for most of the armies. But what it is when you're playing the missions, the way that to win the game is you have to execute that mission best, not I brought Purple Sun and so many power dice and like a unit of like Chaos Warriors with some huge thing. So it's and the missions and the army building all come into affect that.
That's right. No Alpha Strike.
No Alpha Strike. Yeah. Okay, so the next one, powerful units, and we'll put powerful in quotes. Magic items and spells are not crutches for players and deciders of games, but rather tactical tools that assist your rank and file, disrupt your opponent's army, hunt enemy characters, or get those few extra wounds that can push an enemy unit to the breaking point. Right. So you're not looking, unlike some fantasy games or some game system, whatever, you're not bringing that Imperial Knight or 4 to the table. You are bringing rank and file. Most of your army will be rank and file. You might go heavy on heroes and magic and stuff like that, but you will lose.
Right.
You need to have rank and file to achieve the objectives. Except for in maybe the kill mission. The kill mission might be the only one where your power army will actually do well.
But even then, I would say the game is more based as the whole hammer and anvil concept. Your powerful units are hammers. They're really support units. The key to Kings of War is having a nice toolkit and a nice balance. Right?
Something that does the missions.
That's right.
Okay, so this is one of our favorite things, and this really sums up sometimes complete game systems.
Yep.
Everyone knows that player that looks at a rule system and finds a way to skew their list to focus on maximizing powerful rules interactions to win games by executing those rules combos. This doesn't work in Kings of War. Instead, you need to build with a focus on the mission objectives. Between this and the units unlock system for building armies, players are steered towards balanced and varied lists that are not only a lot of fun to play, but more importantly, and this is where some of the hobby feel bads comes from, it's also fun to play against.
Yes.
In Kings of War, you build a toolkit, not a bag of tricks.
Yep. And we've seen in our community, we've seen
it attempted,
and we've seen those, a few individuals get a little bit put off because that's the gaming system they've become used to.
Yeah, it's a different mindset.
It's a different mindset. Once you get your mind out of that, hey, this is a different game. This game is an enjoyment for 2 players to play, or more if you're playing multiplayer games.
Oh, it's competitive as hell, but in a different place on the table.
Place. It's like you said, and again, I'm going to keep going back to that point. It's like chess. You need to use your pieces in conjunction and solve a puzzle.
Okay, so another thing, the terrain layout on the battlefield plays a huge part in the game. A lot of games, terrain does not much more than provide a little bit of cover or maybe impact movement. That plays a much larger role in Kings of War. So terrain layout on the battlefield plays a huge part in the game, with various terrain types playing a very real role in your deployment and tactics. Coupled with the Epic Dwarf map generator, you can generate a great table to play on.
That's right.
That Epic Dwarf, I can't say enough about it. It's instead of setting up a table realistically, you set up the table as per one of the, I think it's 20 maps that are on Epic Dwarf, and you get a really interesting and influential battlefield to play on. Now, that said, no armies are penalized by terrain as such. If you're using something like Epic Dwarf, you have like 2 forests, 2 hills, 2 obstacles, a lake, a field, and 2 impassable pieces of terrain. So also as a tournament organizer, that's really, really good because you know exactly what terrain you need. And you could even, roll up each table, print out a table layout to put, under the mat on the table, so people can make sure everything's set up right. And it works.
Yep.
Okay. So when you're playing a game, when an issue comes up, a quick look through the rules will resolve it due to very clear language. And we've overthought things. We've thought in terms that would be other games. No, not a problem in Kings of War. You can usually find it. There's a couple tricky ones, but it's mostly in the application where you'll see things like surging. Surge tactics are huge, and it's not beginner friendly unless someone tells a beginner how to use it. Okay.
Understanding hills.
Yeah, hills.
Another one.
that one was one we overthought.
Yep.
Okay. So another thing is the game is designed for timed play from the ground up. The whole turn structure, who rolls when, and the way everything is set up is making the most efficient use of your time, but also someone who slow plays to try and burn a clock only burns their own time. So people aren't going to be able to slow play you. They can try, but they're not going to be able to do much.
Personally, playing by the clock just adds the icing on the cake. Having now played on the clock for I don't know how many last X amount of games, I don't want to play King's War without a clock. Yeah,
it adds that pressure, right? And
yeah.
With that pressure comes mistakes, and
it does.
Mistakes are always a learning experience. And sometimes you can look back at a game and say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I hadn't have done this. It wasn't. Oh my God, that rule combination was broken." And this game sucks.
Yep.
Which is what happens in some other games.
It actually turns you into a better player because it helps you quickly organize and self-regulate your thoughts.
Yeah. Just
in terms of gaming.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Okay. The individual factions have a definite feel to them, often simply by an elegant rule that buffs that army in some way, and that's something which is you cannot see by just looking at the rulebook. You look at the rulebook, you look at the units and stuff like that, and you just don't get it. I'd find it very difficult for myself anyway to look at those rules and being able to envisage how they work on. And I do analysis type stuff, so I can usually think of the ramifications of things. But still, you need to play the game.
I think this is a testament and a compliment to Mantic again. This has become more evolved. Because we'll talk about the fluff and everything else later, but compared to first edition, second edition, and now third edition, the actual theme of the armies is really progressing. You see that specifically in a lot of the new armies, like the Night Stalkers, the Northern Alliance, and of course some of the other armies too. They're really getting that theme down. So your army has certain strengths, certain weaknesses, certain buffs. Really, really, really well done.
Yeah, okay, so you look at a dwarf army. Dwarf army is how you think dwarves would be. They don't move very quick. They can hit pretty hard. They can shoot fairly well. They're tough. They're dwarfs. Okay. Then you look at Sylvankin. They have Pathfinder and Scout for a lot of their stuff. And it's not just the units that you get in it, is that with their armies having that available on a broad range, that army plays differently. So on a game you can forward deploy some of your stuff. So if you own both a dwarf and a Sylvan army, you've got 2 armies that play completely different. You look at an Empire of Dust. Okay, they are slow, shambling armies. There's very little in the way, which is fast, so they can't move at the double. So your tactics on the table have to be much more deliberate. But they're tanky, they can take damage, and an enemy can kill them. Probably, I'd say, easier than dwarves.
Right.
Okay, to take out a unit, because generally the defense is a little bit lower, but they have that ability to regenerate. So they're robust but brittle.
Right.
So someone can take them out. So you play that army a different way. And and for your opponent, if you're fighting that sort of army, you want to make sure that you're putting enough in to take a unit out, not giving a chance to regenerate. Whereas when you're playing against dwarves, as long as you've got the positions on the table, you can afford to grind it out over multiple turns.
That's right.
Okay. And you can just go through all the armies, and they all play
And that's the
in
key,
some
is
way.
find one that you feel that theme works for you.
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't matter. You don't need to look at the rules and think, well, I need to get this faction because it's the most powerful faction in the game. You can certainly go on the internet and look for some internet opinion on what was second edition, and we know some people that look, oh, what's the best army? I'm building that one.
Yeah.
In this game, you can look at what you've got in your collection. You can look at what you like aesthetically, and no matter what you build, you're going to have an army that's usable. Some of it might take a little more skill to win with, which is another advantage of Kings of War. But you have a good chance with all of them. You're never going to show up on the table and get whooped, and it's not going to be because your tactics were bad.
That's right.
Okay, so all right, so let's talk. You can start your way through this, and Momo, you can take the lead here.
So time-wise, you can get a full-size game done in 2 hours. That's including your setup and pack-up. Great for parents and other busy types trying to squeeze in partner-approved weeknight gaming. And this is so true. And this gets just a last point on this, is that you become more proficient at this after a few games.
Mm-hmm.
When you first started playing, I think when we first started the clock, I timed out.
Yep.
And that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to learn from that. You start realizing I need to have my dice ready in groups of 10, and when the other opponent is going. The brilliant thing about Kings of War is when your opponent is doing their moves and their stuff, you can be getting things ready for your turn, because it's my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn.
And not only the getting things ready, you have thinking time in your own turn.
Yeah.
Your time is not spent rolling saving throws and stuff like that to try and negate damage. Like some people look at Kings of War and say, well, it's your go, my go, and like I'm bored on my turn. You're only bored if you're not thinking.
That's right.
Yeah, if you're messy and not thinking, you're going to be bored on your turn.
That's right.
Sorry, on the opponent's turn. Okay.
Your typical actions of movement, magic, shooting, and fighting are all streamlined to reduce the amount of time and effort you spend resolving actions. This makes the gameplay very quickly, and your time is spent playing the game, not working out roll, etc., etc.
So huge amount of time saved.
Yeah.
Done by that. Some people look at the rule and say, well, the same thing. And, I'm not doing anything in my opponent's turn. That speeds things up.
It does. Multi-basing. Multi-basing units means for quicker setup and cleanup. You might have 12 units in your army, equivalent to a skirmish game, but you're playing a mass battle game, right? Where otherwise you may be having to deal with over 100 individual models, and time that is just wasted. Moving pieces from the game individually, having to put things back if you're playing undead.
Re-racking your Skaven army, Mr. Dan Miner.
Man, it's so refreshing to have a full unit of 40 zombies, painted, 60 zombies if it's a legion. And they're all on one base. The wounds are placed on the tray. You don't need to remove any figures.
Yep, you don't need to keep a tidy area. It's so easy to transport. You can put your whole army just on a tray.
It's brilliant.
Just put it on a tray and you can bring it to where you're going. So once again, you save time there. So that all comes down to it.
So that we've covered that one. Unit footprints remain static. Allow quick unit movement, pivoting instead of wheeling. So I remember in that old other game that we used to play, the wheel from the corners. That also became very subjective. Very, hang on a second.
Very hard to correct.
Hard to correct once that unit has already wheeled. See, in Kings of War, the quick movement, you pivot. Everything is always done when you pivot. Where's the center of the unit? So you can't fudge or change or move things because it's from the center. Oh, hang on a second, can you just pivot back? And you haven't moved anything, you've just pivoted from the center. So it's easy to correct.
So yeah, and also instead of like you've got 4 ranks, and then I'm going to spread my line out to 2 ranks, and I'm going to move all those miniatures one at a time into
Yeah.
the different locations. Once again, time saving.
Time saving for sure.
Okay.
Efficient combat resolution. Minimum number of rolls required. This speeds up again the calculation part of the game. Maybe you want to expand on that a little bit, Mark.
Okay, so instead of needing, just let's take Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Okay.
For things, you'd roll to hit, you roll to wound, and then you'd roll, your armor saving throw. And you have your modifiers, but they still have them in Kings of War. Instead, in Kings of War, you roll to hit, which is a flat number, which is based on your skill, and then you have a roll to wound, which is basically the defensive value of the target you're hitting. You could have a unit of dwarves with armor 6. Okay, you could also have a unit of what would be like war dance or equivalents with a high armor save because it's their agility. So having toughness as well as an armor value ends up, duplicating effort. So just having that one value, and that speeds things up again, and it's fairly straightforward.
Kings of War is designed for timed gaming, and the rules are created to reduce friction and time wastage. Again,
the way through.
This is all the way through. We've just talked about this in the combat sequence. Instead of having multiple players rolling, I roll to hit you, you roll to defend, you roll to see if your guys test. No, none of that. It is I roll, I'm hitting you, I'm rolling on your defense, I'm rolling to see if I break you.
Yep.
Because I'm the one breaking you. It also is logical in my mind as well. And then during your turn, your opponent has very little opportunity to create flow play. Since they are not making any saving throws, removing models, or arguing if a unit can be seen or not. Again, because Kings of War is designed as a tournament game, my time is my time. And I've actually had this conversation on the stream with my little guy, saying, if you're going to ask me a question, that is your time. We need to clock it over to you so I can answer the question that you're asking me. Because designed as a tournament game, there's no slow play, there's no stalling tactics or anything like that. Your turn, your time is your time, my time is my time. Very well done.
Very well. When you have a rule, if it's hard to implement, you may as well not have the rule.
That's right.
So by just doing that, you've eliminated the need to implement it. It's just done.
Again, rules are very clear and written, so there's not much room for ambiguity or debate or interpretation. It is very clear what the rule structure has been set.
Okay. The clarity of the rules is great. There's a couple of exceptions which could be written better, but often other games influence your thought processes on the way things work. Sometimes it takes second or third reading, but once you play it, you get it.
I often find the rules that are slightly ambiguous still, or the new rules they've just brought in.
Yeah,
because they haven't had time to refine them.
That's right, and they also, Alessio hasn't worked on those rules.
That's true.
Alessio is a master at making concise, meaningful rules.
It's true.
Yep.
If you look at his last couple of games that he's done, he is a pro. He is amazing.
Okay, so I'll take over from this section. Okay, so this is one of the strongest strengths of Kings of War, and I would say that this is present even more than in Warhammer Fantasy, simply because of the multi-basing. And a couple other reasons, but mainly the multi-basing and what that enables. We'll get into that in a second. Okay, so Kings of War is miniatures agnostic. You're not stuck with using a proprietary set of miniatures that suddenly become unusable with a rules change. You can dust off decades-old miniatures. I've got miniatures in some of my armies which are probably older than some of the people listening into this. Yep. Definitely older than some of my friends' children. You can dig through your pile of shame. The minis you haven't painted that are sitting in your or here. It's a double door closet that my wife has never looked into.
Right.
Which is awesome because there might be problems. Something awesome comes out. I really love the Nighthaunt miniatures from Games Workshop. You can pick them up and substitute them for units in the game. You try and do it within reason. I've heard some detractors, shallow detractors, I would say, that will look at a game and see what's on the table and judge a whole game by it.
Yep.
But
And
that happens.
to be fair, that's because of the big company out there that we won't name, because we've named a few of their old systems and stuff here. But they've managed to engage and sort of convince their customers over generation, now in decades and decades, of saying that only use our figs. It's only allowed to use our figs. Only use our current figs. We want you to purchase our new figs.
It's a business.
It's a business. Right?
It's a business selling miniatures,
Yeah.
whereas Mantic is more a business selling rules and
Selling
adding
rules and a
miniatures
hobby.
and a hobby. Well, they say with the other stuff it was hobby too. Mantic's not doing paints, but the other company has done a really excellent job in promoting the hobby and keep it going. I don't know how well the environment, or we've been playing as many games if that company hadn't done what it's done.
No, that's true, and that's a
great thing. Like I don't have a hate on for them.
No.
I just dislike the business first aspect. Like it's doing awesome work, such awesome work.
Beautiful figs.
But they could do some of that awesome work making it less cutthroat.
Well, and that's my point. Is
Yeah.
that you shouldn't feel shame because you're going to use multiple different companies in your army. If you're being creative and you want to use 3 different product lines to bring your vision to the table, there should be nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so King's War is wallet friendly.
Yeah.
Your Mantic's miniatures are cheaper, often way cheaper than some of the other market options. But even better, because Kings of War is miniatures agnostic, you are often able to pick up used miniatures cheaply. You get a lot of people that are, were kind of curious in their, like 20 years ago, that have some stuff that they're lying around. So hey, I might as well just put it online to pick up. So, or usually your local hobby community has those people that usually, you'll be playing until you discover girls, and then girls becomes family becomes no time, and then you hit your 40s or so, maybe your 50s, and you've got time for a hobby now and empty nester.
Yep.
And you can pick up those stuff from those people that have discovered girls or guys for the first time.
And I want to put a little shout out here again, because I don't want to sort of jump off this topic without giving a shout out to Mantic for this, because the first army that I played in Kings of War was using an old company's range that had become non-existent, become redundant, because it was replaced with new models. So I'm talking about my dwarf army, beautiful figures.
Yeah.
But they got replaced by a new line in a different game.
Yeah, they shifted the gaming environment under their banner to something else.
Again,
it's not that you couldn't use them, but who would you play with? Nobody was playing
with, right?
anymore. You don't have any support anymore.
So that was my first Kings of War army, was a dwarf army of redundant figs that I could now use in Mantic's game. I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this point. Because of that, it got me engaged in the hobby, because I didn't have to feel guilty about using another product line model in their game. Fell in love with the game, Kings of War, and since then I have purchased two full Mantic armies with Mantic models. So because of that, because of their open-mindedness of allowing you to use other product lines, I've purchased 2 large armies. And their new figs are gorgeous.
Yes.
I'm talking about the Northern Alliance, I'm talking about the Night Stalkers.
Yeah. Computer technology, design technology, and manufacturing technology is going forward, so things are improving everywhere. Another thing I like to say, being miniatures agnostic, is right now I am doing a very high model count Roman army that I am going to play as Kingdoms of Men. You don't need to, you can bring in, if you're a historical wargamer, you can bring in your historical armies. I'm not sure how you do. You know what? Even American Civil War, you might be able to bring those guys in as Kingdoms of Men. That's quite shooty based, and your movement's going to be a lot of cav.
That's right.
And stuff like that.
Yeah,
so you can bring anything in, and all you really need to do, if you don't need to go all out and make an army for Kings of War right from the beginning. All that matters is that the unit base size is the correct size, and you can do whatever. You could even cut a whiteboard into the correct base sizes and write with a whiteboard marker what those units are.
Oh no, I just cringed.
And it's, but like literally, say you're a serving member of an armed force or something, you'd be able to take like a a 2-inch stack of cardboard, some dice and a tape measure, and you would be able to play Kings of War out on deployment.
Yeah, that's true.
And if it gets lost, it doesn't matter. You cut yourself up some more cardboard.
Yeah.
The dice maybe more difficult.
That's true.
App on your phone, but it's that kind of thing. And also, you can play different scales. We use our old Warmaster miniatures. As in Kings of War, I'm using centimeters instead of inches. So if you've got some 10 mil stuff sitting out there, you could use that cheaply and easily transportable. You could you're also a smaller board then. You can play on a kitchen table on a boat.
Yep.
So easy. Okay, you don't need the full model count for a unit. For example, you could have a regiment, which is usually 20 models. And what you'd have is you could put 15 models on there and you reach what's called the preferred model count, but you could go down to as little as 11 models, which is half of the unit plus one. That is the minimum model count.
Now that's if you're not playing tournaments.
That's well, even tournaments, it's up to the tournament organizer. They prefer that you go for the 75% of the unit. And one of the advantages of this is if you've got units that have bits hanging off, nets, spears, stuff, horns, awesomeness, from chaos that is like hanging out there. You don't need to try and jam them on the tray. You can spread them out comfortably.
In fact, it's almost necessary. I mean, having purchased Mantic models, because they're their poses and stuff like that, they actually don't rank up. So you won't fit them. You have to do a preferred model count.
And that gives you a lot of flexibility in choice of miniature as well. You can go for the Reaper Bones line for some of the stuff that you want to get, and that's like cheap as hell. Painting is a pain, but there you go. Also, this is the part which makes Kings of War the most potentially awesome looking game on the table, is that each unit can be a diorama.
Some of the basing I've seen online. Whoa.
I've seen guys that have done have their idea for the unit was it's a bunch of pikemen blocking a road. And they are on the road. The road's going halfway across their base, and they're standing there as if they're getting ready. My undead army, their whole thing is they're going to be basically like a 1300s, 1400s European graveyard. And if you ever rush, like tiled everywhere, like the ground's all cobblestone tiled, there's skulls all over the place and all that sort of stuff. So I've got that mausoleum that I'm painting up in bits. So my display board is going to look awesome. My units, I'm just slowly adding bits and pieces to them. And maybe if I end up adding some photos to this, because right now it's just going to be a splash screen and talking, I'll try and find some awesome unit dioramas. And if you don't, just Google it and you'll find stuff.
That's true.
Okay, you want to go from this part?
Community. So there is quite the established community, and it's growing since COVID. Actually, it's really grown.
It's huge now.
With the the universal battle.
Universal battle.
On. Because right now, obviously, in the world pandemic going on, people have not been able to play as many games, or the tournaments are non-existent. So the universal battle, interesting interface to be able to play Kings of War online. They're running their second tournament right now. And the participation in those tournaments is quite a lot. It was 108 people in that first Universal Battle tournament, I think, roughly. It could be 160, I can't remember. That's incredible.
Yeah,
this is people playing online, and it's growing because the interest, is just exploding in terms of Rank and Flank is back. When you see that other company that we're talking about, but we didn't really name, really trying to get together and bring their own system back out. That says a lot.
Well, maybe we'll see what they're going to bring out. We'll see. I'm wondering if they're going to make it something like a War Mastery type, maybe 15mm, because I know their technology's going along that way. And being able to play that type of gameplay without the huge. You look at that company's model boxes and you see 5 models for 3-digit numbers. And it's like, oh my God, I can't really afford that.
Well, without speculating, all I know is where's Alessio gone? We haven't
Yeah,
seen him
where's
for a while.
Alessio? Alessio is busy on contract
Is that
work.
a coincidence?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Here we go. Conspiracy theory. Okay, but all right. So here we go.
There's a well-established competitive community. Much of the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle competitive community switched over to Kings of War when GW, the world was blown up.
Yes.
And that's true. I mean, there is Ninth Age out there, which has its own little sort of competitive following.
No vendor support.
No vendor support, right? Whereas Kings of War, they have the Masters tournaments, and you have to qualify for them. And these are large tournaments.
And this was long-established Warhammer tournament
That's
community.
right. Podcasts and videos. There are plenty of Kings of War podcasts and YouTube videos out there. Some really good sites for you to pick up little tips and even just games to watch, which are fun to put on in the background while you're painting your own figs.
Hobby stuff.
Hobby stuff, right?
Yep.
Downsides. It is not Warhammer fluff. So
That's for a lot of people, they can't get past that.
They can't get past that. But what having started in that area myself, we got to go back 30-something years.
Yep.
I was a kid. The fluff wasn't the same back then. It was all birth type stuff. It was like the fluff you got from Rob Parthall, you got from Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing, and you brought it in. The fluff takes generations to build. Now, if you look at the fluff from Kings of War from First Edition and compare it to fluff now, it's grown exponentially. There's novels out now for Kings of War.
Yeah.
Right? It's slowly getting there. It takes time to build that universe.
With the game as it is, it's just going to keep going. It is such a good game.
And again, the thing to remember, it's who's your audience. Bard, you and I are both 40-something, touching on another generation coming up soon. Fluff isn't as important to us now.
No, not so much.
No. Whereas, I talked to my 15-year-old. He loves the fluff from those other universes, but I think really did engage with the fluff in this. So it is getting there. We start talking about, the world that they're building, right? He's right into that. He'll throw questions at me, and I'll be like, I don't know. What do I need to hit?
Yeah. Really.
They tend to run tournaments as individual events. I think we'd all love to see a Kings of War at LVO.
Yes, hell yes.
We get some of our local
That would
guys.
be huge.
Huge, right?
That would be huge.
I think that would be something that would really get me wanting to go to Vegas.
Yeah, well, I've been to Vegas for Warhammer 40k narrative events. I don't like Warhammer 40k tournament stuff as it is now. I used to play 5th edition, did very well in tournaments locally. But the game, to me, or whatever, it got not to my tasting. So I was playing the 40k narrative, and even the narrative got a bit on the silly side. But your other friends might be playing that. They might be playing any of the other games down there. So if you can get Kings of War at LVO, I think that would be huge. And I would be willing to put some administrative effort into getting that sort of thing done. The biggest issue for me would be getting terrain to the event. Actually executing it. I've executed plenty of tournaments. Easy enough to do. It's just the logistics of stuff
from here to there.
Yeah, I wouldn't even really want to get the stuff from here to there.
No.
Some friendly
local
gaming clubs in the US that live kind of nearby, hiring a U-Haul and driving it to Vegas. That would be an awesome kind of nerd hobby thing. But if anyone could provide scenery for that sort of thing, maybe we could talk. Yep. Okay. Okay, and here's one which I noticed for a lot of people. The game looks bland until you get games in.
And that's fair.
Yeah, and that's fair because you have to play the game. It's the on-table activities things and functions that the armies do, which gives you that feeling of flavor of the army. I've got a what was an old Empire army, which is now Kingdoms of Men, or League of Rortia to be specific. I have an old Tomb King's army, which is Empire of Dust. And I have an undead army, which was Night Haunts.
Yep.
I have a Roman army on the painting table at the moment, and I have a Sylvan King army. Every single one of those armies play so differently because each has different tools in the list as well as the build. So, it's like, I've got 8, 9 fully painted, fairly large Warhammer 40k armies sitting in the cabinet, and I found that probably half of them play almost the same as the others. They're not so much.
I think the key thing about that one, though, again, it depends on what you're looking for. If I was to compare, and I'm going to use the term here, the title, a 40k game, in terms of aesthetics, as to how it looks on the table, a 40k game fully out with 2 kitted out, beautifully painted armies, with all that 40k scenery, it looks amazing.
It looks amazing.
You can't touch that. And that's because that game is built for that. Kings of War is a tournament game. Balanced scenery. You just mentioned it earlier. We all like to use the Epic Dwarf scenery generator. And the reason that is done is because it balances that each side gets the same amount of scenery, that there's not a imbalance or unfair side. One side gets the better side, one side gets the more exposed side. That doesn't happen, right? So that is one of the things that a person looking at it and coming from a different game system comes and looks and goes, where's all the terrain? How come it looks kind of bland? Well, you got to play it.
Yeah, it's function, not fluff.
That's right. When you play it, give it a couple of games, because I've had people who I know are gamers, and they write Kings of War off and having never played a game. That's frustrating to me. Because
or they've played one game. They've played one game, and that game has been killed.
That game, yes, that's right.
So,
that's right.
It's an easy one to teach.
Yeah, you give Kings of War a couple of games, and I tell you, especially 3rd edition, if you're a gamer, if that is what you define yourself, if you're a hobbyist where gaming isn't as important to you, maybe that's going to be different. Maybe.
I don't know, even going back to Kings of War 2nd edition, I would rock out my my Empire of Dust and my Empire of Men, or whatever it is, Kingdoms of Men armies to the Wargaming Club, and I would play I'd have one of my friends play, and then after this was Nick, he'd say, why aren't we playing this more? And that's exactly my thoughts on Kings of War. You play Kings of War, you get a good, solid, fair, quick, interesting, fun game. I've never seen anybody walk away with the feel-badsies, and even the worst, saltiest kind of player I've seen play and walk away disappointed at their decisions, not at the rules, not at the game, not at the dice rolls, not at the fairness, not at what the opponents played, but they've been disappointed in themselves. And before they've left the club, they're thinking about ways of fixing what they did.
That's so true. I remember that's how I got into Kings of War. It was at the end of 2nd edition. I had just tested and played out my Dwarf army in another game system, Age of Sigmar. And I played a game, then I had played another game, and I played one more game, and it left me not satisfied. I was not happy about the mechanics, and this was my Dwarf army, which they called, I forget what they called it something else. It was like, it was almost like disenfranchised dwarves. I forget what they called it. It was like, hey, we're not really using you anymore, but
redundant dwarves.
Redundant dwarves. And I literally played against an army that had a couple of figs on it, and those figs went through and just waded through my dwarves like they were butter.
Just
Bard,
smashing.
With a little sheepish little smile, says, Gareth, you should try Kings of War. I'm like, yeah, I tried it at first. No, you should try it. And I'm like, okay, all right, so what do I need to do? And he tells me, you put them on these bases. I got them all based up, put them on the, the right base sizes and all that. I played one game with those dwarves. Not 3 games, and I was hooked, and that was it. And then we ended up going to a tournament. and it's just been, since then, that has been my staple game.
And going back to the community, for the main part, I think the nature of the game doesn't really appeal to the competitive player that relies on analytics of rules.
No
To
gotcha
do all
moments.
that definitely helps. You know, you're not gonna win by gotcha. I've only seen a few people that have been somewhat dodgy.
Yeah.
But that's more a personality thing than the rules allowing them to be dodgy. And and that's like I've had one instance where someone has been dodgy, and that was like a socially imbalanced individual, I would say.
I gotta throw you a quote from a really good guy in our community. He is one of those gotcha players. He loves to list build. He plays all the other systems. And I love this quote because it sort of had him sort of thinking and questioning, and it was an interesting quote. He said, "I'm having more fun playing this game than I realistically should be."
Yep.
He didn't quite comprehend and understand why he was having so much fun.
Yep.
There's no gotcha moments,
Yeah.
and we know this player loves those gotcha moments.
Yep.
And he, of course, he's very good in the system because he is a good game
Well, we
player.
know he's from the stream. Brian from the stream.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I wanted this to be positive because I do respect and like Brian. And
he's
a
completely
gamer of gamer.
he's completely unapologetic and completely open.
Yeah.
He will try and break a rule set, and and will churn out. And here's the difference between Brian and a lot of the other people.
Yeah.
He will churn out a fully painted army to take advantage of
Oh,
what
he
he
does.
found broken. He's not the plastic, the grey plastic with the arms missing guy.
No. Oh no. He will paint within a few weeks, and I know he's got something
He makes
on the
the
burner
effort.
right now as well, that he will do a fully painted, beautiful, like, for example, his last army was a goblin army.
Mhm.
And he has how many regiments of fully painted
Yeah,
goblins
yeah.
as
Quite a few.
fodder?
Yeah.
And then he's got, hordes of trolls, a couple of them. He's got everything. It's a massive army. He's got 19 units on the table.
Mhm. I wonder how many units of angels he's painting right now.
Yeah. No, I actually know what he's doing, but if we're keeping it a secret, because he likes to surprise and say, "Here's my new army, guys."
I saw something that he was building,
Yeah.
so we'll see how he goes.
Yeah.
But I've not really met any. I've met people who've had a game of Kings of War
Yeah.
and they haven't felt it because they haven't played enough of it yet.
That's right.
Like
They come back. It's like
and they
yo-yo. They play a game and they go back to the other system and they come back. I think we have a nice little community growing here. Tony's our new addition with the Abyssal army, gorgeous army. You can see the wheels are really turning for him. I think he really, Tony likes really good game systems.
Yeah.
He's a bolt action player, which is the World War II by Warlord. Very good game system. He likes games that rules are clear, and you could see the wheels are really turning with him. My son plays, who's 15-year-old Zach, playing Orcs, really got into this system, and is now working on his next army, which is the Lizardman army. Our community's growing. It'd be nice to see more people jump in, give it a shot.
Oh, the funny thing is, I see some of the detractors glancing on jealously from across the club room as we are having a ball playing this game.
We're having a ball.
It's I can see them just like, one of us is like, "Whoa!" when something goes wrong, or something like that, and I can see them like looking and saying, "Oh, why are they having so much fun?
Yep.
Why is nobody cranky?" And then I look at like that part of the club room where there's people playing other games, and there's not a smile to be found.
That's right.
So, yeah.
This game is just so rewarding. Fun. Have not had a bad game. I'm thinking I'm on 60 games now, maybe for Kings of War in this edition. Maybe not quite 60.
Yeah, quite a few. I'm still making mistakes. Surging with loot counters.
Oh
I gotta put myself like not a cheat card, but a slap card. Stuff I shouldn't be doing. Okay, so we've been going for almost an hour. I'm not going to go and make this like a regular hobby progress format type stuff. So I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
hopefully you can get your fence-sitting friends to listen to this and maybe give it more of a go than they have.
Give it a couple games. Give yourself a couple of games, and you'll be pleasantly surprised how fun it is.
Give them some beer
Yes.
and an army,
Yep.
and take them through a couple turns, and then go from there.
That's it.
All right, catch you all
Be
later.
safe, guys.